We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. As you know, we have wrapped all things Daredevil Born Again, but in a related note, we will be covering all things Punisher, One Last Kill today. I just blanked on the second part. Punisher, One Last Kill, the Punisher special presentation in today's episode. As always, this will be a spoiler-filled episode, so if you've not yet gone ahead and watched the special presentation, please make sure that you're doing that before you listen or watch our episode. Otherwise, you're going to get a ton of spoilers and ruin all the fun. So, now that we've said all of that, Katie, it is your turn to take it away.
All right, guys, I'm just going to give you like my genuine high level reaction to it. I think as a whole, I mean, it's always cool seeing the Punisher. I mean, the entire fight in the apartment building was cool as all heck. I mean, we had that one weird lapse of CGI, but otherwise,
that was rough.
That was rough. But otherwise, we were good, right? Like, it was cool to watch. And again, he is always cool to watch. He's also really an amazing actor. So watching a lot of the emotional scenes, I mean, we'll get a little bit further into this in more detail, but clearly like those things are just, they're master classes truly in grief and PTSD, just so many things that go into it. So from that level, it was really nice to watch. Like, it's fun to watch that kind of stuff. It's fun to watch an actor who's passionate about the role that he is playing, who plays the role so well. From like, how do I say, like, entertainment purpose, I didn't find it that entertaining. I think I struggled with the pacing, and I think it was mainly because it was a special presentation. And so like, I'll be completely honest, they show him in the vest at the end, the Punisher comes up on the screen, and I thought that was a really, really long intro to the like special presentation just for the credits to roll. And I literally went, that's it. So I struggled, I think, with that. And I don't know if it's because it was the special presentation format rather than just giving him, you know, even a mini series. Like, I don't know what exactly I needed out of that, but it fell kind of flat to me, to the point where I was like, okay, why'd we do this exactly?
Yeah, I also struggled with it, and I really wanted to be like so hyped. Like, I had a friend texting me who was like, "Oh my gosh, that was great," and I was like really trying to feed off of his hype. And then I was like, "I just
was it
can't
Davis?
Get there." No, it wasn't Davis. But I just couldn't quite get there. And that was disappointing because to your point, like, the Punisher is such an interesting character. Bernthal was born to play the character
100%.
and absolutely delivers every single time he steps into the vest. But I think my overarching takeaway was, I guess I don't really know what we were supposed to get out of it. And let me explain that a little bit more, because obviously I understand that Frank is struggling with PTSD and everything related to his family, and kind of this conundrum of, I have now killed everyone related to, the murders of my family, so his stated purpose has been completed. What's next? And that's where you see that really just extremely moving scene where he's about to kill himself. And that's the question he's asking, is what do I do now? And that, he thinks for a moment, is the answer. I think where I got stuck, though, is I felt like the end of his season 2, he had kind of overcome that. Really, he had stepped into the Punisher role, understanding kind of what that means outside of just vengeance for his family. So it felt like we were maybe telling a shorter version of the story that we had told, or I should say the inner journey that Frank is going on throughout season 2 of his show. It has been a minute, but even reading summaries, just a refresher, I was like, no, this is what I remember.
Yeah.
The thing, though, that I will say, to give it, the benefit of the doubt, is mental health is very rarely a linear path, right? And so just because he had kind of overcome it in season 2, I do see the argument and the conversation around saying, okay, well, that was then, it's been however long. Now we're going to see, the doubts start to creep in again, and the challenges, the PTSD rise, because I don't think he ever really dealt with that piece of it. So I see that, but and that was something that I was able to come to after a lot of thinking about the special presentation. But like I said, my initial gut reaction was, didn't Frank go on this journey in season 2?
Yeah, and I think that's been some sentiment I've been seeing online as well. I think, again, overall, don't get me wrong, it's fun to watch, and it's always fun to watch the Punisher do what the Punisher does. Like,
yeah,
and this is the first time he's being brought in fully in the Disney format, and they didn't shy away from who this character is and what he does. I mean, It was gory. It was to the point where there were plenty of times I was like, ugh, can't watch that. Just because I'm like, I cannot watch when he was stabbing the guy with the pen.
Oh,
I physically can't do that.
I think I started gagging. I was like, I can't.
No, I actually was like, oh yeah, we're good.
Yeah, you can stop now.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey, they didn't, dumb him down in any way for the Disney format, which I think was a concern. But I will say, like, beyond it just being that level of, it's the Punisher, of course I'm going to enjoy it, I do kind of mirror that sentiment of, like, I'm just not sure what exactly it was going to give us to further the character, because to your point, this kind of already happened in season 2. I do like your point that from a mental health perspective, it's not linear, especially from a grief perspective. I think that we always talk about everybody grieves differently, and grief is never just over. You never just get over it. I mean, each day eventually hopefully gets easier, but for some people, and in the way that obviously it went for Frank, I mean, in such a traumatizing way, it's hard to just get better or for your days to get easier. It's going to take a lot more time. And so I do think there was that aspect, and I like that perspective of it. I do think I struggled a little bit with that still, because I just felt like season 2 went one way, and this was like, yeah, by the way, here we are again. And also, it was a special presentation that, now, not to pivot us too far, but it was a special presentation that they purposely put out right after the end of Daredevil Born Again season 2. We just came off the cusp of it. They actively moved 2 episodes together of Daredevil Born Again to make sure that this was coming out right after it. And then obviously we see this character coming back in Brand New Day. I'm struggling because from that perspective, I don't feel like we got anything new from the Punisher than where we essentially already saw him in Daredevil Born Again season 1.
I don't necessarily disagree. I think it's challenging. I think I want to take a step back before I react to that and just read a quote from Scarta Payne, who I believe is one of the showrunners on Born Again. And this, it kind of talks about where this fits in the timeline, just so that we can talk about exactly what you're saying. Like, where did we leave the Punisher? And then thinking about that kind of in the larger context of the MCU, which we have to do because he's now fully, you know, in this larger universe. I mean, he's always been part of something larger, right? He did not debut with his own solo show. He debuted in Daredevil and had those connections already, and then had his own solo show. But the scale has gotten much, much larger. So I'm just going to read this quote. He says, "I don't know a ton about what goes on in Brand New Day, and I know very well where we left him at the end of Punisher season 2. I think this tells the story of what happened next after Punisher and before and during the events of Born Again season 2. So this is in theory happening in parallel with what we just watched.
Yeah.
And that kind of is supposedly going to explain, you know, why he wasn't involved. But I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect here because Frank was already involved, right? He was, you know, fighting the anti-vigilante task force, who was actively using his symbol and misrepresenting it and what it stood for. He was captured by Mayor Fisk and then had to escape. This feels to me like a story that probably could have fit better, I don't know, not during season 2. Like, that's where I'm getting stuck, is like, I feel like we've, to what you were saying, we've progressed the character beyond this point. And I think this is such a valuable story to tell, but I almost wish it had come out, you know, between his first appearance in Daredevil and his show coming out.
I know what it's
like
giving?
we've regressed a little.
It's genuinely giving Black Widow.
Yeah.
The movie itself was very good. The story it told was her story, but unfortunately, it was 5 years too late?
Yeah.
That's what it's kind of giving to me, is that it exactly that. It's just out of place.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be different if it was one of those where they retconned it and been like, no, it's meant to be over here. But telling me it's between and also semi during the events of Born Again 1 and 2, I'm struggling because, and this is where we get into this a lot. You have to kind of bring back where your expectations were with things.
Yeah.
And not allow that to be something that disappoints you. But I will say, you know, where we left him at the end of season 1, the reason we were, I don't want to say happy he wasn't in season 2, but the reason we were okay and kind of like, okay, whatever, that he wasn't going to be in season 2 is because we had heavily assumed his special presentation was going to base off of where we left him in Born Again season 1 at the end of that. And kind of some of the deeper struggles that we were definitely kind of edging when we were getting that, all of that with his character, but you couldn't focus on him. It was obviously Daredevil's season and show. So I was like, okay, cool. We're going to go into a really interesting storyline. And don't get me wrong, we got half of that storyline in Born Again season 2. We talked about it for the past how many weeks, but the story that we kind of thought the Punisher was going to be able to tell, we thought was going to be told in this special presentation. So I definitely think like that kind of threw me off too, that we just kind of completely removed this character from where we all last saw him. But we're being told that this is still during that time frame.
Yeah, it just feels very, to your point, it's like isolated. And I think what is something that I'm struggling with a lot is, if you think about kind of the trajectory of the Punisher, we have a starting point in terms of where he is in the MCU, which is the Born Again season 1 appearance.
Yeah.
Then we leave him off at the end of season 1. We know he's going to be in Brand New Day. So it's like point A to point B. To your point, in theory, from what they're saying, this is a point A, point 5, you know, from one to the other, but it doesn't feel that way. Like, it just feels like something very different. It feels like the character's in a very different place, and we suddenly don't understand how he got to this place. What I'm trying to understand is, you know, this very unsettled version of Frank, I guess I want to say, is more like the version that Matt found in season 1 of Born Again than the version that we saw escape Fisk's Red Hook prison. Because here's the thing, and I think this special presentation really drove it home. Frank runs into trouble when he doesn't have a purpose, right? And I think coming out of Fisk's prison, we all assumed he had a purpose. whether it be vengeance against Fisk or going after the anti-vigilante task force for the use of his symbol, whatever that was going to be, I think we all thought that he kind of had a next step, which Frank needs to thrive. And he seems so listless and lost in this special presentation, and I think that's where I'm struggling a little bit. Maybe we were all making assumptions, but at the same time, I think those were safe assumptions to make based on where we left the character off. Yeah. And then on the other side, you're thinking about his move into Brand New Day. Well, okay, I guess the last 5 minutes where he's donning the vest and he's going and doing the punishing, that'll lead him into what he's going to do in Brand New Day. That's fine, but I guess I wish there was maybe a little bit more connect from where he started to then where he's going. There just seems to be like maybe the writers' rooms weren't talking. I don't know. It just feels not quite connected.
Yeah. No, I mean I kind of felt the same way. It felt like not that I was in the theater, so I didn't like walk away like I was walking out of the theater, but like when it was done, I just was like, I don't know what I watched exactly.
Yeah.
I don't have any visceral feelings about it. Like I just am kind of like, oh, okay, I just watched something. Yeah. And now I'm moving on. And so it was kind of frustrating in that way. I don't want to discredit the fact that it is always a good time to watch Frank be Frank. It is. And I think regardless of the bigger story and even his story, it was still like enjoyable to go and watch the Punisher be the Punisher. And like I said, that freaking apartment scene was great and I loved it and I loved every second of it and I was eating it up. And the scene in the bakery was eating it up. And I love seeing Frank on my screen doing what he does best. So I'm never going to complain in that capacity. I think it's more so trying to understand kind of what was the point of the special presentation in and of itself and what they were trying to convey to us that we didn't already have conveyed, especially knowing we're going to see him on our big screen now at the end of July.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately the question that I still am trying to also answer. And I've, been kind of racking my brain all day trying to think like, what did we get out of this that I think we didn't know about Frank before? I think the shining star there really is the conversation about mental health. I think we've seen it with Frank, specifically in his own show. I think they spent some time, showing it and discussing it a little bit. But I think seeing how low he was in this presentation and having that conversation, I mean, the obvious suicidal tendencies, the taking of the drugs, the hallucination, like he was really in a rough situation, completely isolated. I think those are the types of conversations that I think are the real value here coming out of it, not so much the trajectory of the character and where he's going. Versus I think maybe that, at least I don't want to speak for everyone else. That was my expectation, was it was going to be more plot driven. And I think in this instance, it was actually more emotion, more mental health conversation driven. I mean, we've talked about this many times with Frank, but he's a veteran. So he has, that PTSD, then he has the trauma from his family. There's a lot going on. And I think, there were very poignant moments. The man in the veteran in the cap who, was on the streets, they definitely, the dog, I had to stop. I was like,
Nope.
I'm glad that man who shoved that dog under the car died, but I think he should have died slower. Personally, I think Frank should have drawn that one out. And I think if the man had explained exactly what he had taken from him, I think Frank would have drawn it out. So whatever. Anyway, that was brutal and absolutely traumatizing. I was really hoping that wouldn't happen. But that man, was wearing a Marine Corps hat. So you're, supposed to infer that he was a veteran and you see him on the street. And so I think there's a lot of larger, more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like larger themes than just here's the Punisher at the beginning and here's the Punisher at the end. And this is how he's going to get into Brand New Day. I think they were trying to say something deeper, which was fine. And I think they did that well. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. I do think that was probably the bigger aspect of it. unfortunately, I think when you come off the heels of Daredevil Born Again season 2's finale, and
Yeah.
you kind of, I mean, even coming off the heels of the first season's finale, I think we all had very clear assumptions of what we thought we were getting from the special presentation. I think when you're coming directly off of season 2's finale and you're like, there's a reason they're giving this to us a week after, I think it's easy to get into those expectations of we're expecting to see this and XYZ because now we have to understand how he gets from here to here. And this is the story they already built for him. And so, kind of sometimes taking that step back and doing almost like a think piece, which in and of itself is kind of what it was. That's not a bad thing. I just think, unfortunately, when you have a certain level of momentum, there is an expectation that is created. And again, I said it earlier in the episode, it's hard because you have to kind of, we try to go in with very low expectations, not in a bad way, but because we don't want to go in and be disappointed because we thought,
Right.
something else was going to happen. I think this one was a hard one to not kind of, because of all the things we said. You set up something that I think we anticipated happening and it just didn't, which is okay again, but I just think then timing, you also made it seem again that you were going to go down that direction and it didn't. So it's okay. I think it was a great think piece on a lot of the things you kind of listed, talking about, PTSD, mental health, how, this country treats veterans, things of that nature. I think it very much touched on that. Obviously we were talking about a lot of gang violence and nothing was directly connected to Kingpin and his like Safer Streets Act kind of thing.
Right.
But I mean, we did see a lot of violence in, Little Sicily, which is where they were. You see a lot of these things that are definitely bigger topics in and of themselves, which again, I think if I gave this another watch, knowing what I know now and not letting myself think, it's going to be something else, I think I would very much enjoy it a lot more knowing, no, this is going to kind of be an emotional roller coaster of sorts, if you will.
Yeah, I think one of the things I found myself thinking about as I was watching, just based on the conversations that we've had around Daredevil season 2 and this push for Matt to go and, finish someone off, namely Kingpin, I think what was interesting about this piece was that it actually showed what the ramifications are if you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because in killing the Nucci family, Frank basically created a power vacuum. They were obviously a crime family. They were doing bad things, but they were keeping other things, other chaos at bay by controlling the streets. And in removing them, he basically allowed chaos to reign. So it's kind of this bigger conversation then about, power vacuums and removing people from power without, creating some stability within and things like that. And I thought that was very interesting, or even like the unintended ramifications, right? Frank had his mission, but did he ever think about what comes next? Probably not. And then in some ways he's then torturing himself by living there and living in the chaos that he created, which I think was, really interesting and very poignant.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I actually think just on a grander scale, it's going to be kind of interesting to apply that maybe to what we'll expect in Daredevil Born Again season 3, because we are also creating its own version of a power vacuum without Kingpin. So I think that's kind of an interesting thought process if you think about what we have coming in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think this was mainly the things that I wanted to talk about for the special presentation. Definitely, overall, I think it'll be something that I'd like to watch again, especially before Brand New Day. I think to your point, maybe having A, some time to sit on it, and B, some different expectations, knowing it's a character study versus something plot driven to move Frank from, one show to the next movie appearance.
Right.
But overall, would be curious to hear, hit us up on socials. Tell us what you guys all thought, because I feel like the internet's maybe a little divided on this one, but anytime we can see Jon Bernthal suit up, I'm happy with it. We'll be back next week. Katie will tell y'all what to expect, but please make sure that you are following on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the website, which is linked below, as well as our Buy Me a Coffee if you're interested in supporting the show.
And you guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are also linked in the show notes down below. And as T kind of set up, we will be back next week talking Spider Noir already. Believe it or not, I can't believe like we're kind of fast approaching that. We're going to be doing our predictions. That episode will be coming out on a Sunday versus the Friday, which we've been doing because of Daredevil. So keep an eye out for that coming out Sunday. And we'll be back as we get more content, all good things, because Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.